Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, along with Tim Fitzgerald, and welcome to Big 12 Insiders. This is our bowl game edition. We're going to break down all the bowl games that Big 12 teams are in. Have bowl games lost their meaning? We'll go into that a little bit. And what I think is actually the real reason that the importance of bowl games have been diminished. It's probably not what you're thinking, but we'll go into that a little bit on why I don't think the bowl games are as important as what they used to. Because I'm flipped on this, Fitz. I used to fight it. I used to say, hey, the people that are saying bowl games are not important, I used to say, hey, you never played in one. You never had a family member that wasn't in one. You never covered one to see what goes on. That's why you're saying they're not important. Well, I've changed my tune on that, Fitz. I've really changed my tune on that here over the last, I don't even think it's been 6 months, maybe over the last 3 months. I've changed my tune because I see where now some people it's idiocy where they say it, but for the most part, it makes sense. And like I said, we'll go into that. And maybe we go into that first before we break down the bowl games. Maybe we just talk about that, the importance of them, and then we'll break down everything that goes into it. But before we do, again, as always, everybody, remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to hit the notification bell, and always leave those comments. We appreciate all the comments that you guys leave. So let's get into this. First things first. Bowl games, Fitz, not as important as what they were, call it 5 years ago. You don't even have to go back a decade. 5 years ago, bowl games seemed to be a big deal. Now they are not. Tell me what your reasoning on why you think it is.
I just think it all is part of this NIL and transfer portal and all these changes to college football. Probably began with guys sitting out for the NFL draft. And it's just kind of cascaded from there. And I think the role of bowls has changed. And what's changed in importance for me is that they're not really important to anyone's season other than maybe bragging rights or anything else.
Right. For me, two things that why bowl games aren't important anymore. The first one is there's a million of them. They bastardized itself when they decided that 6-6 teams needed to be able to go to a bowl game, which there's no reward anymore. There wasn't a reward. Now that started a long time ago when they started letting 6-6 teams, just 6 wins. I'm like, hold on a second. 6-6 is not something to be jumping for joy about. You shouldn't be rewarded for going 6-6. 7-5, maybe, but okay. But at least have a winning record to go to a bowl. Now, if you go to a bowl, you can have a 500 record and end up with a losing season if you lose the bowl game. To me, that's insane. That was the first problem when they had, a bowl for the toenail bowl, I'm going to scratch my back bowl. They got all this stuff. It's crazy.
Well, you bring up an important point. Another devaluation of the bowls was ESPN deciding we needed all these bowls.
Yes.
Because they wanted the programming.
Correct.
And they saturated the market in some ways. We got bowl games starting here pretty soon. And I'm not ready for them, but ESPN wants the programming. So that's the epitome in the world in which we live.
Yeah.
We have games because ESPN wants them, and we don't get games because ESPN doesn't want them. Really? Yeah, that's why I think bowl games have outlived their usefulness in many ways. I almost think they should go to exhibition games or something at the end of the season at chosen sites. Maybe the bowls are more cool than that. I don't know that they are. But eventually the guy who built wagons for a living bought a truck. And it's time to move on. The playoff changes that. The playoff's not going to get smaller. If anything, it'll end up at 16. And, then we're talking about the meaningless of so many games. However, the value in bowl games is no longer as a is like the final cherry on top of your season. Those used to be big matchups. Every game kind of had a storyline to them. I mean, so many conferences shared long-time roles, like in the certain bowls, like the Rose Bowl, and now it's just watered down and a mess. And the best teams aren't playing in them. A lot of players are opting out, and really, in many ways, these games represent the start of the next season.
Correct.
Have a pre-spring game exhibition in so many ways, because you might have completely different players, might have a different quarterback. Your best players might be gone. And now they've just kind of grown silly, and they're not nearly as interesting to fans.
No, they're not at all. You touched on something on earlier on why I think the second reason why I think that the bowls don't have nearly as enough meaning is the transfer portal. See, people think that the college football playoff is the reason that bowls aren't important. I don't think that's the case. I mean, there's look in March Madness, the NIT has a place. Now, don't get me wrong; it's not necessarily that important, but teams go and compete in that thing. They want to go and compete and win. You didn't make the big dance, but there's a consolation prize. You may not like it, but at least it's there. I'm not saying that bowl games are that insignificant, because the NIT is pretty insignificant, but it's a tier down. But it just also can be a stepping stone to the next season. Get a bunch of young guys playing, finish off the season the right way. One of those things is if you just cut down the number of bowls, you can get that. Maybe they'll do that. Maybe they won't. Make the qualifications a little bit harder, because that's what it used to be. There were times teams were winning 8 games a year, didn't qualify for a bowl game, Fitz.
Bowls.
And that's just the way it was. Hey, you didn't win enough. Sorry. Now you win 8 games. You're guaranteed. I mean, first of all, you'd be in the playoff. That's one thing. You could be in the playoff, for crying out loud. But that's a different conversation for a different day. But that's what I think. It's the transfer portal to me. And it's not the transfer portal in itself. It's just the window on when it is and why. Because, again, I'm pro transfer portal. But because of where the window is, and technically because of where the window has to be, this is what you get. You get players opting out. Because players didn't used to opt out, but when you started getting agents involved, and now that you got agents involved in college football, more parents and advisors and handlers say, hey, man, why are you playing in this bowl game if you're going professional? And it's weird, because it didn't used to be that way. Even if you were going pro, you could be the number 1 pick in the draft, and you're not playing for the national championship game. You played in the bowl game. You risked injury. Now, maybe now you think it's not smart, but I kind of think, kind of like you changed with the times. The money wasn't as good. You could be the number 1 draft pick, and maybe let's just say you get $4 million, which, don't get me wrong, $4 million is a ton of money. But now, if you're number 1 draft pick, it could be $40 million.
Life-changing.
I mean, so there's a huge difference. It's like, oh, hold on a second, So we'll see, because in the Big 12, we got a couple of guys, Colorado, that could be drafted very, very high. And as of now, Coach Prime said they're going to play. We'll see if that happens. I don't know. And I don't know the answer either, Fitz, on whether it's right or wrong. I'm not opposed to kids putting their futures on the line for an exhibition football game if they don't want to do that. If you think that, and it would be that way for any job. For instance, if you were going to be a brain surgeon and you had to go as part of whatever, the next step is, well, you know what? You got to go whitewater rafting before you go sign your contract to be a brain surgeon. Are you willing to do that? And that's the thing. It's like, hold on a second now. It's just, I don't know if you should do that. I wouldn't begrudge you for not doing that. This is the same thing. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go and be a high draft pick. Do I really want to go play in this football game where literally one play and it could all be over? I could never play again. I don't begrudge people for not doing that. I commend them if they do, but I'm not going to beat their head over a barrel if they don't. And again, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the top draft pick, Fitz. If you're going to be a 5th round draft pick, that's still really good money compared to the rest of the world on what you would be making. Maybe you could say, well, maybe you should play to try to get a higher draft pick. I can see the value in that. Absolutely. And you probably should if that's your way of thinking. But if you don't, and you're like, you know what, I'm a fifth rounder. It is what it is. I'm going to make this amount. Who am I to tell you not to do that? And I think that's kind of where we are, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with all that. It's really business now to kids because their parents are more savvy. They're more savvy. They have representatives now that are looking out for their interests. That you know damn well the agents are reaching out before they should be. So they're getting a lot of advice to not play. So it takes kind of a special player or a crazy player to go ahead and play. And, particularly if it's a pretty meaningless game for your program. And now, look, if you're in the playoff, look, there should be some honor, that I'm going to see this through. We got a chance to win. This is why we played. This is the whole season right here. So I kind of look down at those who might quit on their team in the playoff, but every other game, unless it's something just really important for the program, I don't blame you one bit. Just do whatever makes you feel settled, whether I need to play this or I got to protect myself. Do what you think makes the right answer for you.
Right. And let me ask you this, because you mentioned this, guys quitting on their team in the playoff. Do you think they're actually quitting if, for instance, if I'm a third team guy and I'm looking for a better opportunity, I might be at Georgia, but I'm a third team guy.
I don't care about that. Yeah.
And I want to move to a different school. And the only time that I can move is now. If Georgia's in the national championship game, how do I leave? Like, when do I leave? I can't. I mean, the window will be closed.
Yeah, it's silly. You're forcing players to go into the portal before games. You're just
correct.
Forcing them.
And I think it's weird. I mean, it's like we've talked about a couple times. It's unfortunate that this is when it is, but it has to be now. I mean, it literally has to be now. You can't, because you could say, well, it has to be after all the games are over. Well, school's already started. And if school's already started, you can't just transfer when school started. What, are you going to come in 3 weeks after the semester started? You can't do that. So it kind of is what it is, unfortunately. Yeah. And you also can't say, well, they should have to wait until after the spring. Well, you've missed a whole off-season program, spring ball. You can't do that either. I mean, that's the whole point of transferring now, is so you can get in, so you can earn a spot. So it's just weird timing, but unfortunately it is the timing.
Yeah.
But those are my two reasons on why I think that bowl games are not as important. Not the playoff, or even NIL. I think it's the transfer portal window, which unfortunately it has to be. And there's just way too many bowl games, and they reward mediocrity. That's really what it comes down to. But bowl games have become a reward for mediocrity, and I think it's ridiculous.
It's devalued it for everyone.
Yep.
Unless you're going to one of the grand bowls,
Correct.
And particularly if it's an early appearance for you, one of the not common for your program. They're still huge, but there's no splendor and grandeur to the Rate Bowl. There's nothing. They just play the game. They have a media day and play the game, which is fine. But I feel like maybe there's a different structure for that, or, maybe this is the perfect way to end it. But as we get ready to start talking about the games, West Virginia is playing in a bowl game that happens, next week?
Yes.
And they have an interim coach because they fired their coach.
Correct.
So this is the absurdity. This season was so bad we had to fire the coach. This season was so good you get to go to a bowl game.
Correct. So it's odd.
It should never line up that way.
Who's going to play in the game? That's the next thing here. And let's just start talking about it. West Virginia, they're going to the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. They play Memphis, December 17th, 5 minutes from my house. Well, who's going to play in the game? Because as we know, first of all, guys are going to jump in the transfer portal no matter what. You're going to lose guys. You're probably going to lose anywhere between 15 and 25 guys every single season. You could be the best program in the history of the world. You're going to lose between 15 and 25 guys every single year. That's just the way it works these days. Well, now you get a new head coach. Everybody could leave. We saw it with Marshall. Marshall has basically said, hey, man, you fired our coach or you didn't re-sign him because you were mad and you couldn't get along with him. Screw you. We're out. Well, they're going to a bowl game. Who's going to play? Like, they're losing, like, I think it was 18 starters are like, nope, we're out of here. Really? So who's going to play in that game? So for West Virginia, it's like, how many guys are actually going to jump in this portal? How many guys are going to play? Is it even fits? Like we talked about, you play a bunch of young guys and you try to finish off the season the right way. Well, who's out there? Who's battling with you? Now, there's plenty of guys that are not going to the next level that are going to be seniors that are going to play in the football game. But it isn't going to be a full roster of those people. I can assure you of that. So we'll see. But in this matchup, just with all the turmoil going on, I think Memphis probably wins this football game, Fitz.
I would agree. They might be the better team. And
yeah,
it's just insanity that this game's even being played. If West Virginia lines up at receiver, the bearded guy with the musket, we got issues, man, because he shouldn't be on the field with that gun. And plus, I don't think he's very fast. But I'm with you. I'm taking Memphis all day on this one.
Yes. So next one up, K-State going to the Rate Bowl against Rutgers, December 26th, the day after Christmas, kind of what you talked about. Now, at first, it's going to be in Arizona, but it's the day after Christmas. In a game that I'm not sure a ton of people now they'll watch it, but are you going to go?
Yeah.
Like the day after Christmas to the Rate Bowl, I'm going to go to Arizona and I'm in Kansas. I mean, you basically are saying you're going to have your Christmas in Arizona because what are you going to go the day of the game? That's probably not going to happen. And there's lots of people that would want to drive. It's a little far drive the day after Christmas. I could see if it was New Year's Eve, but it's the day after Christmas. This one's tough. I think K-State wins just for the simple fact that as of right now, their transfer people that have left, there hasn't been that many impact players. And again, that's as of right now. This could all change because, it's a couple weeks down the road. That could all change, Fitz.
Yep. It could. This game's interesting because it's not. I mean, that's what fascinates me about it. This is the first bowl game that I remember. Let's forward here. I cover Kansas State, and I've done so for a very long time. This is the first bowl in a very long time that I've seen greeted with complete indifference by the fan base.
Yeah.
There just seems no interest in going, and maybe that would be different if the game was on the 28th and you could go down a couple days in advance after Christmas. But it looks like fans are saying, we're just going to enjoy Christmas at home and watch that one on TV. And Rutgers ain't going to bring many fans. So it's going to be a pretty barren bowl, which gets to the point that these are just now exhibition games for television broadcast. Correct. And I think we need to get out of that business and figure out a different way to do this.
Right. I always thought bowl games either on Christmas Day or the day after was ignorant anyway, just for the simple fact for the fan perspective alone. If you want people to go, look, it's Christmas. What if I'm a 58-year-old guy? I've had season tickets at Kansas State or Rutgers for 20 years. You're telling me that I got to decide between spending Christmas with my 4 grandkids at my house versus going to a bowl game? There's not even a discussion on what I'm going to do. So that's what they put these fans in, these decisions, which to me, again, like I just said, it's not a decision. Nobody's doing that. So I don't know. To me, it's always been ignorant to have those games the day. Now, New Year's is something different because people will travel for New Year's, have a good time, yada, yada, yada. But on Christmas, people are trying to spend that at home, be with family. And you're telling me I got to go literally across the country if I'm Rutgers, halfway across the country if I'm K-State. The day after Christmas, not doing it, don't like it, silly.
Yep, I agree.
TCU, next up in the New Mexico Bowl against Louisiana. Look, I thought TCU turned their season around after some pretty bad losses, one at home. Both of them were at home, one to UCF, the other one to Houston. In Houston game, they got physically embarrassed. But they turned their season around. I think they blow out. And again, depending on how many guys actually play in the game, but if a good number of their players play in this game, I think they blow Louisiana out. I don't think that Louisiana's in the same class as TCU.
and that's good for TCU.
Yeah,
And I know the fans are probably like, playing Louisiana in Albuquerque.
correct.
Does kind of sound funny, but so on the surface it doesn't have much meaning, but in that locker room, getting that I don't know, kind of the high you get if you're a bully,
Mhm.
we just push them around, as opposed to losing this game. Yeah, the impact will be there. It'll all be mental unless someone physically gets injured, but the impact of winning or losing will still be there for TCU. And I probably think that winning is going to be much better for the 25 season than losing to Louisiana and Albuquerque.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next up, Texas Tech going to the Liberty Bowl. Now, this one will have a little bite to it, although I'm not sure how good Arkansas actually is. Like I said, Oklahoma State beat them. I know the SEC is pounding their chest about Arkansas being 6-6, and I always have to remind those fans, well, yeah, you're pounding your chest about how Arkansas is 6-6, yet they couldn't beat a team that couldn't beat anybody in the Big 12 all year. Just think about that for a second. Well, I don't care if they had 1,000,000 more yards in the game. They lost to a team that couldn't beat anybody in the Big 12. So tell me how good your conference is again. Again, different conversation for a different day. But I don't know. Like I said, is Taj Brooks going to play in this game? There's some time. December 27th is when the game is. We'll find out if he does or doesn't. If I'm him, I probably don't. But maybe he loves Texas Tech. He's like, you know what? I want to go out in a bang. So I'm not going to – either way, I'd be fine with it. But I think Texas Tech is the better football team here, and I think they win it over Arkansas.
This is kind of an important game. I mean, in a bragging rights kind of way, because Arkansas still, after losing to Oklahoma State this season, is like, we're the SEC, we're better than everyone in the Big 12, which is patently absurd. And Texas Tech has been a roller coaster ride in some ways, but it seems like they're playing pretty good football now. So yeah, the Big 12 needs to win this one. I'm just going to say it. Something good can come out of Memphis and from this game that I hope the conference moves on from, because nobody really wants to go to it anymore. But we'll see. We'll see if Texas Tech can. It's so hit and miss in bowl games, and if they come out and play their game, they're gonna go up and down the field on Arkansas.
Absolutely. Now this next one has a little bite to it. This is the Texas Bowl, and now it's on New Year's Eve. It's Baylor against LSU. Now again, opt-outs, and I could keep saying that over and over again. So, but we'll see. I think first of all, Baylor. I'm not sure how many opt-outs they're actually going to have, or either team, because Baylor is rolling right now. Baylor is absolutely on a roll. Not only are they wanting to finish this thing off on a high note, also going into next season, they're going to want to win this game because they want to keep that momentum. Any extra recruiting that they can get in the second signing period, also with transfer portal stuff. I think Baylor kind of turn, and this was a huge for their program fits this year, that they kind of flipped the switch and said, we're not as bad as what we have been. We've got good players in here, guys that want to buy in, fight hard, play hard. That happened. It literally happened. They beat some good teams in the Big 12 this season. They gave a couple away as well. Who knows? They don't give that game away to Colorado. Maybe they're in the Big 12 championship game. Who knows? But what I do know is they need to be able to beat LSU in this football game.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is a bold prediction, and I promise you folks, you'll hear this from no other analyst about this game. I'm going with Baylor in the Rodeo Bowl, which is an event that takes place 2 or 3 days in advance of the game. Baylor will dominate LSU in the Rodeo Bowl. I just think the culture speaks all you need to know about that. But I think they'll win on the football field too. I think Baylor's just turned into a rock solid program. This is an interesting game if you're Dave Aranda, isn't it? All of a sudden, the program under, where you kind of grew up into your national acclaim is across the field from you as you're coaching a football team as a head coach. So I find this game a little bit intriguing. Here's how it works, though. LSU wins, SEC. LSU loses. Well, we didn't really care. We had a lot of opt-outs. So I just want to prepare everyone.
Yep, that's exactly what it will be. Insane way of thinking, but it is what it is. Moving on. Now, the Alamo Bowl fits December 28th. Colorado versus BYU. And I understand that the reasoning was because the Pac-12, they kept the affiliations. Why they kept the affiliations with teams that no longer participate in the Pac-12 is mind-boggling. However, they didn't play each other this year, so I'm okay with it. I actually am. I'm okay with it. Now, as far as the opt-outs, we talked about that. I'm not sure what BYU will have. Coach Prom I like his way of thinking. He said there's a program out there, and he was 100% talking about Florida State, that had a bunch of opt-outs, and they've never recovered. There's some meaning to that. There's some truth, because Florida State was god-awful this year.
Yep.
And it started because of all the whining that happened after and justifiably so. I mean, they got shafted last year, but they never got over it, and it lingered. And they got their head beaten in a game that they could have just went out and competed in, and they chose not to. Well, Coach Prom is saying, well, Colorado, they're going to compete, that those guys are going to play. Now, does it mean they're going to play the whole game? Does it mean they're going to play a quarter, a half? I don't know. But he's saying they are, and if they are, I think this is going to be a hell of a football game, Fitz, between BYU and Colorado.
It's entertaining for sure. And I think when you are still eligible, staying at a program, and you don't really want to play in the game, you're not interested in it. If you're opting out of competing, which Florida State did, it says something about you. And I think we saw that defined this season. They've opted out of competing. My stance on this game was originally, I was disappointed that two Big 12 teams would meet in this game, because they're two good teams that I'd like to see meet someone from a different conference. But as you can see, the Big 12 had so many teams. You got the Frisco Bowl and New Mexico Bowl kind of roped into the Big 12 right now. So they needed spots. But once they knew they were only getting one team into the playoff, which became pretty evident down the stretch, this was the only way also to up the bowl payout, because this is the best bowl payout the conference has, and now you get both shares of it.
Yep.
So it is, got a minute in terms of athletic budget spread across 16 programs impact, but it was probably best financially at the end of the day. And you're right, because these teams didn't play each other. This is an entertaining matchup, and it could get really good viewership.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, Colorado tends to do that anyway, and BYU does too. So, and they did not play this year. It'd be very, very interesting, this football game. Next up, the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Iowa State playing December 28th against Miami. I would suspect that Miami is feeling pretty ticked off. But I think Miami's going to have a lot of opt-outs of this football game, Fitz. I don't know that for an absolute fact, but I'd be willing to bet that Miami has several opt-outs of this football game. Will Iowa State? They might have some as well. I don't think they'll have near as many. But I like the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I think it's a good bowl, and it's a good matchup. But I just have a feeling that there's not going to – those frontline guys from Miami, they put a ton invested into this season to make the college football playoff, and they didn't make it.
Nope.
And I just got a feeling you're going to get 8 to 12 frontline guys from Miami that don't play in this game.
Yeah, that's a problem. If the guys aren't showing up, okay.
Right.
For everything I said about bowls not having the same pomp and circumstance that they used to, the Pop-Tarts Bowl did an amazing job with weaving their marketing into an enjoyable bowl experience. And I think it helps that Pop-Tarts are a part of American culture in a way that an insurance company isn't, or a loan company isn't. And I think this game has a little value to it that most of these games don't. And we'll see. I think Iowa State will have a lot of players play. That's more in the Matt Campbell culture of things up there. But Big B, I'm curious to see what you think. Is there significant value for the Big 12 in winning this game in kind of a matchup of programs in comparable situations between these two comparable conferences?
I think there can be fits, but I think it's going to need to be if Miami has a lot of guys playing the game. Because you're right, Iowa State, the culture that they have, I believe that a lot of guys are going to end up playing in that football game.
Right.
So the only way that I see that it can have a significant value of ACC versus Big 12 is if a lot of guys play. If they don't, then I mean, everybody can just point to, well, Miami had this many starters out and yada, 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 and it'll be true. Regardless of what we want to say or think, it'll be true. That's kind of why the luster gets lost in the bowl games of these matchups of teams that aren't in the playoff. Well, is our conference better than you? Well, who was playing? And I mean, all that is legitimate. Where in basketball, you can point to it because guys aren't opting out. You know, these preseason games and these preseason tournaments, you know, non-conference games where these teams are matching up, the guys are playing. So you have a more clear picture of what conference was better than the other one because everybody's playing, where in these it's not. And it's the only way you get it is in early season games. But if you're the SEC, you're going to say early season games don't mean anything because like Miami went to Florida and beat the brakes off of them. Well, Florida wasn't playing good at the time. Well, somehow that was Miami's fault, but different conversation, different day. And then last but not least here, Fitz, Arizona State. Now, Arizona State gets the winner of Texas and Clemson in the Peach Bowl. And finally, we get a game, you know, New Year's Day, which you used to wake up. Now, this is the one thing that I can say. We're going to wake up on New Year's Day and have good football. That was always a thing of mine, especially growing up as a kid. Even into my high school years, it was, hey, man, yeah, I'm going to go to a little high school New Year's Eve party, but I'm waking up early and I'm watching all the bowl games that happen on New Year's Day. So we're going to wake up and we're going to still have some really good football against Texas or Clemson. I suspect it's going to be Texas because I think Texas is better than Clemson, but it's college football, so you don't know. I give Arizona State a chance to win this football game. I do.
I agree.
I know they're going to be without their top receiver, but they were without him with Iowa State, and they blew the doors off of Iowa State. Now, Texas is more talented. They're a better football team than Iowa State. I believe. We don't necessarily know that. I believe they are. They pumped up Texas this year. But when you start matching up schedules, it's like, well, who did Texas play that was any good? You know? They really didn't play that many good teams, Fitz. And the one they did, they lost. So, we could get into nitpicking. I just think Arizona State's got a real chance to win the football game. I do. And you know how big that would be for the Big 12? Because they pumped up Texas as being – because a lot of people think that Texas is like the third or fourth best team in the country. And they give Arizona State – they shouldn't be in. They should be last, yada, 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 shouldn't have had a bye. They beat Texas. All of that would have to change. Now, it won't because you know who controls the media and all that kind of stuff. But all of that would have to go out the window. But I give them a good chance because I think they can be more physical than Texas.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing that you just brought up, because for me, the key matchup here is Arizona State's ability to run the ball through the front of that Texas defense. Because I've been saying this on a different podcast, that the greatest value in college football, the greatest commodity in college football is finding those elite level defensive tackles.
Absolutely.
And they're hard to find. And the SEC tends to get them partly because it's the SEC, partly because it's very regional. A lot of those guys do come out of the Southeast or Texas to Florida, that whole belt. And honestly, now with NIL, they're valuable and you pay them. Texas gets those guys. So can Arizona State, that offensive line, still find a way for Cam Scatteraboo to be productive? We'll know early. This game is basically being decided in a phone booth because it might come down to how one guard or center matches up on a tackle. Can they move him around to get some space for Scatteraboo? And if they can, game on. I think Arizona State's going to win.
Yeah, I like Arizona State's chances in this football game. So there's your bowl schedule, people, for the Big 12 this year. Again, if you're a team that's, and it's most of us, obviously, and you follow a team that's not in the college football playoff, I'm not trying to damper you. I'm not trying to get you not to watch. I think everybody should watch. I mean, as long as college football is on, I think everybody should watch. Because I always think the season goes by too fast. But it has lost its luster. We're not being honest if we say that it hasn't lost some of the glory. But again, I don't think it's just because of the college. I don't think it's at all because of the college football playoff. I think it's because there's too many bowls, there's too many meaningless bowls, and the transfer portal has just put and not for the reason that you think that I don't like the transfer portal. It's because the transfer portal, the timing of it just causes kids to have to make decisions and opt out of places where they're not going to play in a football game. So it's unfortunate, but it's just the way the world we live in right now, Fitz. Can't do anything about it.
Yeah, you're right about everything you just said, but I want to point out, and I want to look deep into Matt Campbell's eyes. Well, for many reasons, but to make a point here. Coach Campbell, I know bowl games aren't the same, but just understand this. This is your opportunity to eat a mascot. And that doesn't come around very often in life. You and a guy named Rocco could eat a live mascot, and the screams are fantastic, and the strawberries all over you. It's just amazing. Go for it. That's my speech.
Yeah, that was an interesting deal last year. So I appreciate everybody joining us, man. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We'll be diving into next week. I don't know. Maybe we'll get into the actual college football playoff and start talking about some of these matchups in particular, because it's going to start being real next week. I know the game. I mean, yeah, we did the 20th, so that there's a game
next Friday. Yeah.
Yes, it's coming around quick. So we'll dive into a little bit of that, but we'll figure out something. Again, put in those comments. You got some stuff, some real topics you guys want to hear and talk about that makes sense. We will absolutely do that. So appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Again, thanks for all the support. Continue to jump in those comments section. Always follow, like, and subscribe. We will talk to you guys next week.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.